Welcome to Workplace Psychology with Dr. Martha Greidick. I'm Dr. Martha Greidick. This podcast examines a wide variety of work-related issues through the lens of industrial and organizational psychology. And while many of the topics discussed here may be seen as intended for white-collar employees and their employers, in reality, the ideas presented here are applicable across organizations and industries. Additionally, many of the topics discussed here may be applicable outside of the workplace. I encourage you to examine what's presented here, apply what makes sense to you, and simply discard the rest. Greetings everyone, Dr. Greidick here. A quick reminder that my new book, The Stress Solution, is now available on Amazon. I encourage everyone to check it out. The link for it is in the description below. Look, we all have stress. Stress is not something that we can avoid or eliminate altogether. The key to your success when it comes to dealing with stress and its effects, it all comes down to how well you manage the stress in your life, how effective you are with your stress management efforts. This book, The Stress Solution, is all about mastering stress management. It's about learning the types of skills that will be with you for the rest of your life's journey, the types of skills that can be applied throughout your lifetime. As situations change, as things change, you can always rely on that which you've mastered. So check out The Stress Solution. It's a great opportunity for you to finally master effective stress management. It's great for you. It's a great gift idea. Check out the link below. It's now available on Amazon. I highly recommend that you give it a look. Whether or not you are in a leadership or management position, you can probably figure out that employee engagement is a good thing and that it's an important thing. Similarly, whether or not you could come up with a formal definition of what employee engagement is, you can probably identify engaged employees as well as employees who lack that certain engagement, who are less engaged or not engaged at all. Now, we know that employee engagement is important for the organization as a whole, for the health and success of the organization, but it's also important for the individual employees. Now, while there are things that individual employees can do in terms of increasing their own engagement, there's a lot that has to do with the organization and its leadership and its management as well, in terms of helping to increase employee engagement within a company, within an organization. Today's episode will focus on that. What role leadership plays in employee engagement. First, let's look at some of the basics of what are the characteristics of employees who are engaged. Well, first of all, you have a better morale, not just for that employee, but across the board for your team. When you have highly engaged employees and more engaged employees than not engaged employees, morale will be visibly different. You can see things such as better productivity, better quality of work, fewer mistakes. But we're also seeing things like better job satisfaction. Employees who are engaged tend to be ones with more job satisfaction in general. More engaged employees are also likely to exhibit organizational citizenship more likely than those employees who are disengaged. Things such as absenteeism and high turnover rates are also related to engagement in terms of higher engagement leads to lower turnover and lower absenteeism within a company. It's not difficult to see that such characteristics are good for the company, but they're also good for the employee. If you think about any of the characteristics listed here, they are equally as important and as potentially beneficial for individual employees. So it only makes sense that not only should the company and its leadership want higher engagement, but employees should also be interested in companies where engagement is higher. How does an organization's leadership play into higher engagement among its employees? For one, it comes down to leadership styles. When we look at leaders or managers, for that matter, who engage in negative leadership styles, micromanagement, for example, it just creates a certain negative vibe and a certain negative culture and experience for that employee. However, when we look at different kinds of leadership styles that promote a better environment and a better experience, they also tend to result in higher engagement amongst the employees or from the employees. Some of the most obvious styles of leadership may include leadership styles such as servant leadership styles, where the leader sees himself or herself more as a partner that is there to help the employee to succeed. Democratic leadership also makes sense as the style of leadership that will help to get more engagement from its employees. And of course, transformational leadership is the kind of leadership that, again, will foster and encourage higher engagement from employees. So those are things to consider for anyone who is in a management or leadership position within a company. But it's not just for leaders and managers to consider. As an individual employee, if you are not in a leadership or management position, consider what is the leadership, what are the management and leadership styles within the organization where you work, and especially the ones that are closest to you, that affect you the most. It may be helpful in understanding your own relationship with your employer. What would be some of the simplest and most straightforward advice for those in leadership and management positions? First and foremost, look at your leadership style. If your leadership style includes one of the three mentioned here, or any other leadership styles that are seen as positive and productive, then you're much more likely to be fostering and encouraging higher engagement amongst your team members. On the other hand, if your approach to leadership or management is kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum, you may very well be contributing, if not causing right out, issues with employee engagement. So that's a big consideration for management and leadership positions. Beyond that, you have to think about things such as communications, not only daily communications, but being able to clearly and effectively communicate things such as organizational goals and vision for not only the organization, but also for the individual employees. Do you have a recognition and a rewards system or program in place? How do you keep your employees motivated and, in some sense, engaged? Do you give them a reason to keep giving the best of themselves to you as a leader or as a manager and to the organization? Do you offer professional advancement and professional growth for your employees? That's a big motivator for a lot of people. So that's something else to consider as a manager or as a leader who is working on improving and keeping a high employee engagement. All too often, employee engagement may be seen as something that happens by chance or something that may or may not be influenced by the organization, or maybe it's even shifted as the organization's responsibility, somehow removing the responsibility of individuals within leadership and management positions. But nothing could be further from the truth. Employee engagement can absolutely be affected by the organization, but in essence, by the organization's leadership and management. So it's important that if you are in a leadership or management position at an organization, you have to take that responsibility and you have to be proactive. As I said, first look at your leadership style, look at how you are connecting and communicating with your employees. What kind of opportunities are you giving to each individual employee in terms of their daily experience, in terms of the career development, in terms of their motivation and connection with the company? These are simple and straightforward things, but they're not always easy. So they do require time and effort. However, if you are in a management or a leadership position, that's part of your job. You have to step up. As this episode comes to an end, let's review what was discussed. We already know that higher employee engagement is good for the organization. It's also good for the individual employee. So rather than leaving that to chance or thinking that it's one of those things that may or may not happen, it's up to those in leadership and management roles within an organization to take that bull by the horns, so to speak, and take responsibility for increasing and keeping high engagement among their employees. There are, of course, things that a leader and a manager can do. First and foremost, examining their management and leadership styles. As mentioned in this episode, there are certain styles of leadership or management that are much more likely to yield higher engagement among employees. On the other end of that spectrum are management and leadership styles that can be downright detrimental. So look at your own leadership style, but also consider how engaged you are with your employees, what kind of recognition and reward system you have, what kind of communications you have. Do you clearly communicate the goals, not only for the organization, but also for the employee with individual employees? What about the general vision, both for the organization and in many respects for the employee as well? Are there opportunities for professional growth and advancement? Those are all things that need to be considered when your aim is to improve employee engagement within your organization. As the week unfolds, I encourage you to take a look at the engagement within your own organization. And while most of today's suggestions were aimed at those in leadership and management roles, individual employees can also take a look at how their managers and their leaders are conveying those types of things that will either improve engagement or decrease it. If you understand how you are being led and managed within an organization, you then have a better chance of understanding your own behaviors and your own experiences within that organization. So as the week unfolds, I encourage everybody, those in management and leadership roles, as well as those who are not in management or leadership roles, to examine employee engagement. For those of you who experience this podcast in an audio-only version, I encourage you to check out my YouTube channel, Stress Free with Dr. G, where you can find the video version of the podcast. In addition to the podcast, you can also find videos that pertain to stress management. So check out Stress Free with Dr. G on YouTube. The link for that is in the description below. Thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe to this podcast. I look forward to seeing you here again next time. Until then, I wish you joy and well-being.